Hello, I'm the Sonoran Desert Grower. Welcome to the Permaculture Classroom. Today we're going to be talking about permaculture design. We're going to define permaculture. Permaculture is a contraction of the words permanent and agriculture and permanent culture. Permaculture is a way to live sustainably in a region for many generations, taking care of people and taking care of the environment at the same time. Permaculture uses ecology as the basis for designing sustainability into food production, housing, technology, and community development. As permaculture designers, we study the patterns found in nature and lessons found in natural ecosystems. We mimic these patterns to design sustainable homes, farms, and neighborhoods, as well as less tangible structures like community economics and food distribution systems. This is the permaculture tree. It's a visual representation of what permaculture is. We have the four elements of life, which are light, earth, air, and water. We have our products from the permaculture tree, which would be businesses, suburbs, villages, farms, gardens, aquaculture, aquaponics, all that stuff. Then we're going to get into the three main trunks, which are the permaculture ethics, and that's care of people, care of earth, and passing on the surplus. Now we get into ideas. The ideas, the whole system design is super important. It kind of feeds the whole thing. At the roots, we have the sources, which would be botany, biology, agriculture, horticulture, geography, energy, finances, economics, anthropology, architecture. All these different sciences and these knowledge sources come into whole system design and thinking. So right here we have the permaculture design principles. The first one is everything is connected to everything else. Place elements in relationship to each other intentionally. The second one is every element should serve many functions. The third one is every function is supported by many elements. So what does this stuff mean? The first one is talking about you want to think about the relationship that different elements have and put them together intentionally. We're designing with purpose. The second one is let's think about the functions of these elements and how many we can get. We want to make less work for ourselves, and the only way to get to that point is if we're stacking functions. So the second principle is the idea of basically stacking functions. We want to get the most out of our work. The third one is we need functions to support elements. So every function is supported by many elements. So for example, if we're going to plant a tree, we're going to plant the rain first. We're going to install a rainwater harvesting earthwork, plant a native edible tree, so that once it's established, we don't have to keep watering it with the municipal water supply. We can let it thrive on rainwater and produce food for ourselves, produce wildlife habitat, create a canopy where we can grow other native plants that can feed us or give us medicine. So that's kind of the basic idea. And these are the three main principles that you need to get started designing your site today. So let's run chickens through this process, through this design process. Chickens need water, food, and shelter. Their shelter needs certain things like a roost, nesting boxes, feeders, etc. The outputs, they produce manure, feathers, eggs, and meat. Their behaviors that we need to think about. They scratch, they forage, they dig. They have a social hierarchy that we need to pay attention to. When they are lacking the things they need like water, food, and if their shelter isn't set up properly, we're gonna tap into that natural social hierarchy they have, and it could create a lot of problems. So we have to think about how to design a chicken coop intelligently so that we're creating the least amount of work for ourselves, and we're stacking functions and they're taking care of themselves. So how do we do that? We go through the design principles. How are these things connected? What is the relationship between these different things? How can I get as many functions out of a certain element? How can I support those elements with the functions of other elements and create less work for myself? So let's do it. Let's run the chickens through the design process. So let's talk about relationships and how we put these things together. So we know that chickens release 80% of their manure at night. Super important fact. So how can we use that, right? We know that they scratch and forage. So another key behavior that we need to think about. The first one is an output, the second one is a behavior. So these are functions of this element, which is the chickens. They have certain needs, like they need a roost, which is basically a stick that they sleep on. So this is where the magic happens. We start thinking about, okay, this is an output, this is a behavior, this is a need. How can I stack functions, support these functions by other elements? So now we get into the other side of things. Let's pair this up with our compost bin, right? It makes the perfect sense. There is a relationship between both of these elements. They're connected. Remember that first principle, everything's connected to everything else. Place elements in relationship to each other intentionally. We're designing intelligently. We're thinking about stuff and how these things are connected, right? Chickens release 80% of their manure at night. We should somehow incorporate that with our compost bin. That's going to create less work. That's going to stack functions, right? They need to sleep on a roost. They need a stick. So how about we put that roost right over our compost bin? That way at night, they directly deposit all of their manure into the bin. We don't have to scoop it up and throw it in there. They're going to do it for us. Another level, by having a compost bin in the chicken coop, we're going to be adding all kinds of kitchen scraps and yard trimmings. So we're going to be taking care of a key function that our chickens have, which is the need to scratch and forage. We're going to give them what they need so that they're happy. And if they're happy, they're not going to be pecking each other and fighting with each other. So we're supporting this relationship that they have, right? And we're thinking about them, and we're giving them what they need. Another thing to think about is the reality that they are huge biorecyclers. They have the ability to go through tons and tons of kitchen waste and yard trimmings and turn it into manure that they directly deposit into our compost bin if we put a stick on top of it that they can sleep on, right? A roost is just a stick. You can use a mesquite branch and just drill it into place, and there you go. At night, they're gonna put all of their poop in your compost bin, and all you have to do is turn it, right? Keep it wet and turn it. So they're gonna do a lot of the work for you though, because they're gonna be scratching in there, they're gonna be eating stuff in there. And the other cool thing to think about is they're gonna sift it for you. One of the things that you need to do if you have a compost pile, when you want to use it, you have to sift it. But if you think about it, if we have wires surrounding our chicken coop on the walls of the chicken coop, they're gonna sift it, and you're gonna get compost sifted at whatever size wire you're using. So if you're using 1/4 inch wire, if you're using 1/2 inch wire, 3/4 inch wire, you're gonna have sifted compost of that size, right? So it's super, super critical to think about these things and to place things in relationship to each other so that you're creating less work for yourself. Why can't we have a relationship with chickens in this manner where they're doing most of the work? Because it's an innate behavior. They have these innate needs, these innate outputs that we can think about and design for and create a very nice system that requires very minimal labor from our part. The main thing we gotta do is make sure we're adding kitchen scraps in there, making sure they have another source of feed, water, and clean it up every once in a while when we go and turn our bin. Clean up the rest of the floor, the bedding on the rest of the floor that is in the compost bin. So let's talk about the solstices. We have the summer solstice, which is June 21st. This is when the sun reaches its most northern point in the sky. It is the longest day of the year and the official first day of the summer season. The winter solstice is December 21st. This is the inverse. This is when the sun reaches its most southern point in the sky. It is the shortest day of the year and the official start of the winter season. So this is the best orientation for a structure or a home, a chicken coop, a greenhouse that we want to passively cool or heat with the power of the sun. We want it on an east to west orientation. That's going to give us the ability to use plants and the way that the sun moves throughout the sky to passively heat and cool this house, this greenhouse, this chicken coop, whatever it is, whatever kind of structure we're trying to passively cool and heat with the power of the sun. So let's talk about the differences between these two different orientations. Right here on the left, we have an east-west orientation, and that is the best for passively heating or cooling a structure. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to draw the winter solstice. The way you do that is you put a 90-degree angle on the southernmost tips of the structure that you're going to be designing for, and then you draw a 45-degree line to the edge of the property. So, and then that would be the winter solstice, when the sun rises and sets from east to west. So that is our solar access zone. And you can tell that it is much smaller on the right hand side because we have less surface area. So it's going to be much harder to heat and cool the house on the right. And we could do the same thing for the summer solstice. Do a 90-degree angle and then do your 45s, and that's your summer solstice. So these are where the sun is going to rise and set in the summer. Okay, so this is why this orientation is the best, because in the winter, what I'm drawing right here is how much I am harvesting the solar rays. So the sun is penetrating the window, I'm keeping my solar access zone completely open, and as long as I have a floor with a lot of mass, that would be dirt, tile, brick, anything that's going to soak up the solar rays and release them at night, I can passively heat my home in the winter. And that's why this orientation is the best orientation. So now let's talk about the north-south orientation and what happens here. So in the summer, we're actually doing what we're doing in the winter on the east-west orientation. We are harvesting the sun in the summer. We're going to heat up half of our house basically from noon until sunset with the summer sun. And it's going to be super, super hard to cool our home passively. Now what I'm showing you here is that in the summer on the east-west orientation, I have much less structure to shade, and it is a lot easier because it's only hitting a small portion of the house. And if we're looking at the north-south orientation, it's going to be a lot harder to heat it up in the winter as well. Half of this house is going to be super cold right here in the winter, because I'm only going to be able to bank solar heat in the southern half of my house. So this is why the north-south orientation is not the best for passive solar harvesting. And this is a key concept in permaculture. This is how you can bring down your electricity bill and all these different things. So if you have this east-west orientation, you can do a lot. This north-south orientation, if that's what you have and you own your home, then work with it, but it's not gonna create a 20-degree difference. And that's what we're talking about here. It's gonna create a huge microclimate, 20-degree difference. Okay, so now we're gonna design a site, a fresh site. I'm gonna do my 90 degrees and 45s to the edge of the property line. That's step number one. The second thing we're gonna do is draw in our master solar arc. And we wanna maintain our solar access zone. We don't wanna put any huge trees in this solar access zone. Okay, so now we're going to draw our master solar arc, and what we do is we just basically do a semicircle from one point to the other point of our winter solstice lines that we drew earlier, right? So 90 degrees, 45 to the edge of the property, and then you draw a semicircle. and that is your master solar arc. We're going to put all of our tall tree layer trees and small tree layer trees in an arc in this fashion. And what this is going to do, it's going to automatically block the harsh summer sun and harvest the winter sun. And it makes it super easy to go into a site and design it in a way where you're working with nature. So we draw the line and then we start putting in our trees. And you want to draw them in at mature size to scale, right? So you want to draw them in at the size they're going to be when they're fully mature. So that's what I'm doing right now. I'm putting in all the trees for the site. We're going to put in a mix of native edibles and a select few fruit trees that can be sustained off of gray water and rainwater resources. So this is how it's done. And depending on how big the property is, we might want to put in more trees closer to the house on the east and west side to block the harsh sun during the summer. Our trees, those could be small tree layer trees, those could be full-size trees, and we draw them into size. All of these trees are going to be in rainwater harvesting basins. So the sun is only in the south for a little bit of time. In between that time, it's moving from south to north, and a seasonal trellis on the south side of our house would be very useful to block the sun throughout its movement throughout the year. So we could put native hummingbird vines, native butterfly vines. We can put more water needy plants like passion flower, morning glory, whatever you want to do. You can grow some food on this thing. You can grow some green beans, cucumbers. This is basically just a rebar trellis that you attach to your house, or you can make something prettier. You want to flare out the ends though. Whatever you end up doing, you want to flare out the ends so you get good coverage when it's really hot. But you're still going to maintain that good solar access zone so that in the winter you can passively heat your house up with the power of the sun. So let's talk a little bit more in depth about these trees and this master solar arc. On the east side, that's a good spot for deciduous trees because they'll lose their leaves in the winter and give the structure more sun as it gets colder. So as they start to lose their leaves, obviously it's the fall, it's getting cold, and it's going to allow the structure to get a little bit more sun when it's getting cold. Right here on the north side, that would be a good spot for fruit trees. Fruit trees need winter chill hours, and this is going to be where we can get a little cold microclimate in the winter, especially with the winter shade line, which I'm drawing in right now. If you want to plant some stone fruit, this would be the ideal spot. This would really be the ideal spot for most fruit trees in the Sonoran Desert because it doesn't get very cold here. And I'm going to give you a little calculation. 1.5 times the height of whatever structure equals the winter shade line. Now, this is specific to Arizona based on our longitude and latitude. If you're in a different state, you need to get a good passive solar design book so that you can figure out what the coefficient is for your part of the world. But this is how we do it. You can multiply the height of whatever structure, whatever tree, anything, and the azimuth casts the shadows north in the winter. So that means that shadows will cast directly north in the winter. So we can plan for that and use that to produce awesome fruit in the desert. So let's say that we have a structure that's 25 feet tall. We're going to plug it into the equation, and that's going to give us 37.5 feet that the shadow is going to be cast to the north. And that's going to be my winter shade line where I can put my fruit trees. And that's how you do it. You could figure all this stuff out before you plant any trees. And that way, when you are planting your trees, you're putting them in the best spot for them. They're producing all kinds of food for you with the minimal effort on our part. So on the west side, this is a good spot to put evergreens because we always want to block the west harsh summer sun, and it's not really going to matter in the winter. If you have like a citrus, I would put it on the southwest tip of this solar arc. They have a tendency to freeze. We can also put our gardens in the south or above the winter shade line in the backyard, right? So anything that grows low, we can keep it in the south. We can have our solar ovens down there. We want to maintain the solar access zone. That way we can have our solar panels on the roof. Okay, so at this point in the design process, you start putting in your tanks and all the other elements you would need to support the permaculture system. So these tanks could support some of these fruit trees. This would be the gray water lines going on the fruit trees. We could put in our chicken coop, our worm bins, our bees. If you want goats, chickens, whatever it is, right? You start putting it into the system. You start thinking about the relationships between things, and you place them together intentionally in your system so that you're creating less labor by stacking functions. Because at the end of the day, we don't need to be doing everything. At the end of the day, we can work with nature and tap into the natural systems that exist so that we can get more with less. So if you're in Tucson and you would like to apprentice under me, contact me, the Sonoran Desert Grower at Gmail. We're going to keep permaculture affordable and accessible. You want to learn how to do aquaponics, you want to learn how to plant the rain, you want to learn how to build soil for real, I'll teach you. So I'm currently accepting apprentices. Go ahead and email me if you're in Tucson and if you're interested. I also have a Patreon account, www.patreon.com, the Sonoran Desert Grower. You can sign up and support this channel. If you would like to support this channel, check out Desert Monsoon Apothecary on Instagram at Desert Monsoon Apothecary. This is a family business that I run with my partner. We wildcraft medicines responsibly, and we grow our own medicines, and we make high quality medicinal products. Check it out if you're interested. Thank you for your support. Have a lovely day. Hope you enjoyed the workshop.